I really hope you're going to enjoy the voiceover version of my 2019 semi-abstract watercolour painting. So, shall we get started? A full list of the materials can be found in the description below. But as you can see, I'm working in my sketchbook and I'm working across 2 pages, and I've used some framing tape around the edges, and I'm just using a large brush to wet the paper. So I'm using a wooden peg or key that you get on the back of box canvas paintings, and it helps to stretch them. You can use a plastic card. So I've dipped my little wooden peg into my paint box there. The paints are freshly squeezed paints, and I'm just applying this sort of burnt sienna and Paynes grey colour, kind of wet into wet. And if you notice there how the paint is running up into the kind of sky area, which is quite beautiful. So I'm just gliding it along this cold press paper and just seeing what happens. So I'm sort of creating a bit of a horizon line to begin with. So it's going to be semi-abstract. I always like to have something to do with kind of a cityscape or a landscape or seascape. So this is thicker paint. I've applied this paint, which is pretty much black, or you can use Paynes grey, and it's damp into wet. So the paint underneath is very wet, as well as the surface of the paper. But the paint is thick and creamy, so it doesn't run as much. And I'm just sort of using the little wooden peg to create some sort of dark blue effects there, using Prussian blue with the black. And I've dipped that little wooden peg into those 2 colours and applied that paint. And as you can see now, I'm just tilting to see what happens. I'm not sure what's going to be the sky or the water here. I just want to see where the painting takes me, and this is what I love about this kind of way of painting. So I'm using this large damp brush to kind of get the paint moving, to tease it down a little bit, to encourage it, and I'm kind of controlling it as well. And as you can see, I'm very gently pulling this down. I have slowed the film down a little bit, so it'll be helpful for you to sort of really follow what I'm doing. So I hope you find that helpful. What I love is that you actually mix the colours on the paper here as well. So I've got a paper towel here, and I'm just collecting any puddles that have gone onto the tape area and just letting everything run down pretty much at a 90-degree angle. Now I'm going to tilt the other way, just letting everything run down. So if you don't have framing tape, you can use masking tape or washi tape. And since 2019, I usually use washi tape. I really like it. I find it's very kind to the watercolour paper. But if you find that your tape is tearing the paper, use a hairdryer to soften it before you remove the tape. As you saw there, I've just spritzed with a spritzer bottle just to dilute the paint and also to get it moving. You notice I'm still tilting and just mopping up there as well. And it's just exciting. So it kind of looks like reflections there. So what I've done is I've dipped that little wooden peg. Again, you can use a plastic card or anything else you can find sort of lying around the house. And I'm just sort of painting in buildings, like almost like somewhere in London perhaps, or a skyline somewhere. And just sort of pressing down this thick, creamy, neat paint that I've got straight from the tube, from my palette. And I'm just sort of sculpting these buildings, sort of swiping left and right, up and down. As you can see, it's quite a dry brush effect, or not brush, dry wooden peg effect there. So it's quite nice. It creates the light and dark of the building, but also almost looks like windows, etc. So it's quite nice. And I'm using different parts of that wooden peg as well to create thinner sort of marks. So I'm using the large brush now with a mixture of phthalo blue, painting it damp into damp. And I am again tilting my painting. I'm going to spritz again very gently that blue colour, just to slightly dilute it, just at the bottom edge there. And I'm going to see what happens here if I sort of turn my painting the right way up kind of, and let that paint sort of run down a little bit. As you can see, some of the buildings have sort of ran a little bit there on the left, so I'm just mopping up a little. You do take chance when you're painting like this, but the fun of using a sketchbook really allows you to let go and experiment. So I really encourage that. And I've actually decided to carry on using the paper towel to lift out some clouds in the sky. So I've actually decided to use the plastic card now. So I've dipped it into the tubed paint in my pans, in my paint box, and I'm using a very dark colour, a little bit of Prussian blue and black, and I'm just printing on with the plastic card to create thin marks, swiping along to create this sort of rectangle look of a sort of very tall building there. And I'm kind of layering, even though the surface underneath is still damp, and I'm just printing away here and experimenting. And as you can see, it really does create the look of reflections here as I pull down the paint from that sort of damp paint on the sort of horizon or water's edge there. And what I'm doing now is I'm just sort of lifting off with the plastic card the damp paint to create some light areas on the left hand side and on the right hand side there as well, to create some light in the water as well. And I would say when you're doing this, just swipe once and make sure the paint isn't too wet, otherwise it'll all run back in on itself. So I'm just spritzing here and getting the paint to run down from that sort of water's edge, a little bit of that burnt sienna, the Prussian blue, the black, to create some lovely reflections. And again, sort of tapping in to build up darks with my card using neat paint. This is tubed paint. I haven't watered it down. The actual surface, the wet surface, will dilute the paint or the spritzing as well. And I'm just printing again more marks for all these buildings sort of on the skyline and cranes, and there's lots of cranes on the skyline in London, so that's where I'm sort of getting my inspiration here, but it kind of really creates interest as well. It's a little close up here of me just printing away a touch of burnt sienna on the card there, and just sort of pulling away. And what I quite like about using the card or the wooden peg is you can literally, you know, create buildings by swiping, just a little swipe to create the rectangle, and also make sure you use different heights as well, shorter and taller buildings. It looks a lot more realistic. So I'm just printing in a little bit more dark here. Again, freshly squeezed paint, which I love. And it's really come to life. I love all the darks, I love all the lights, especially in the sky and the water. And I really like that colour combination, that warm burnt sienna with the cool blue and the black to create the darks. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments section. And if you'd like to share your work, you can do so on the members' private Facebook group. And a link for the group can be found in the description below. And if you want to search for any of my Patreon tutorials, just go to my website. A link for the website can be found in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Happy semi-abstract painting. Bye for now.